The grease under my fingernails told a story that nobody at this wedding wanted to hear. I stood in the corner of the Lake City Country Club's grand ballroom, nursing a whiskey and watching my wife Lisa laugh at jokes that weren't funny, told by people who wouldn't last 5 minutes in my world. "Eddie, you clean up nice for a grease monkey," came the voice behind me. Richard Sterling, Lisa's father, appeared at my elbow like a bad rash. His tuxedo probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and he never let anyone forget it. "Thanks, Richard." I kept my voice level. After 15 years of marriage to his daughter, I'd learned to pick my battles. "You know, I was telling Tom here about your little auto shop." Richard gestured to a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Tom Hartwell, Lisa's biggest client at the law firm. Real estate developer, country club member, the kind of guy who'd never changed his own oil. Tom extended a manicured hand. "Richard tells me you fix cars for a living. That's honest work." The condescension dripped off his words like honey off a spoon. I shook his hand, noting the soft palm, the way he winced slightly at my calloused grip. "Someone's got to keep the wheels turning," I said. Lisa appeared beside us, radiant in her emerald dress, her law firm's success written in every piece of jewelry she wore. "Are you boys talking shop? Please tell me my husband isn't boring you with carburetor stories." The laughter that followed felt like sandpaper on my skin. My own wife joining the joke at my expense. "Actually," Tom said, swirling his champagne, "I was wondering how someone transitions from manual labor to events like this. Must be quite a culture shock." "Oh, Eddie's gotten used to it," Lisa said, her hand finding my arm in what might have looked like affection to an outsider. "Haven't you, honey? Though he still insists on doing his own maintenance. Can't take the mechanic out of the man, I suppose." More laughter. I felt something cold settle in my chest, a familiar weight I'd been carrying for months now. Ever since I'd found the hotel receipts in Lisa's purse, ever since I'd seen the text messages she thought she'd deleted. The bride, Lisa's sister Jennifer, swept over in a cloud of white silk and champagne giggles. "What's so funny? I could hear you all the way across the room." "Just getting to know Eddie better," Tom said. "Your brother-in-law was telling us about his automotive endeavors." "Oh, God," Jennifer laughed. "You mean the garage? Lisa, remember when we were kids and you said you'd never marry a guy who got his hands dirty for a living?" The silence stretched for exactly 3 heartbeats. Long enough for me to see Lisa's face flush, for Richard to clear his throat, for Tom to take a sudden interest in his shoes. "That was a long time ago," Lisa said quickly, but the damage was done. "Well," I said, setting down my whiskey glass, "I should probably mingle. Congratulations, Jennifer. Jake's a lucky man." I walked away before anyone could respond, threading through the crowd of lawyers, doctors, and business owners who made up Lisa's world. The world she'd pulled me into 15 years ago when she was a struggling law student, and I was the guy who fixed her car for free. The world where I'd never quite fit, no matter how much money I made. Because that was the thing nobody in this room knew, except for one person I was about to enlighten. My little auto shop was actually Sterling County's largest automotive and towing operation. I owned 47 vehicles, employed 63 people, and held contracts with 3 counties and the state police. Last month, my holding company had quietly acquired Hartwell Development Group. Tom Hartwell worked for me now. He just didn't know it yet. I found Jake Morrison, the groom, standing on the terrace looking overwhelmed. Poor kid was 26, fresh out of business school, and probably wondering how he'd ended up married into the Sterling family circus. "Heck of a party," I said, joining him at the railing. "Yeah, it's a lot." Jake loosened his tie. "Your wife's family certainly knows how to make an impression." "That they do." I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a particular email, and handed it to him. "Speaking of impressions, you might want to see this." Jake read for about 30 seconds. His face went from confused to shocked to pale white. He looked up at me, then back at the phone, then at me again. This is real? Signed the papers 3 weeks ago. Your new father-in-law's business partner just became my employee, along with everyone else at Hartwell Development." Jake stared through the glass doors at the party inside, where Tom was holding court with a group of admirers, probably telling them about his latest real estate coup. Does he know? Not yet. I was thinking of telling him Monday morning. Let him enjoy the weekend. Jesus Christ. Jake ran a hand through his hair. "My dad's been bragging all night about landing Tom as a business partner. He's been making jokes about your job." I noticed. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the party through the glass. Lisa was laughing at something Tom said, her hand resting on his arm, a little too long, a little too familiar. Can I ask you something? Jake said. Why didn't you say anything in there when they were making jokes about the grease monkey? Yeah. I took the phone back, slipped it into my jacket pocket. Because sometimes it's better to let people show you who they really are before you show them who you are. And who are you, Eddie? I smiled, but there wasn't much warmth in it. I'm the guy who remembers everything. Monday morning came like a hangover. I was in my office at Sterling County Automotive by 6 a.m., going through the weekend's towing reports when my secretary knocked. Eddie, there's a Tom Hartwell here to see you. Says it's urgent. I looked up from the insurance forms I'd been reviewing. Send him in, Carol. Tom walked into my office like he owned the place, which was ironic considering I now owned his. He'd traded his wedding tuxedo for a $1,000 suit, but his face had the same condescending expression he'd worn Saturday night. Eddie, right? Listen, I'll cut to the chase. There's been some kind of mistake with my business accounts. My bank says I'm now listed as a subsidiary of something called Sterling Holdings, LLC. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the moment. My office wasn't much to look at. Metal desk, filing cabinets, a coffee maker that had seen better days. But the view through the window showed 47 vehicles with my company's logo, and that was worth more than all of Tom's designer furniture. No mistake, Tom. Sterling Holdings acquired Hartwell Development 3 weeks ago. I'm Sterling Holdings. The color drained from his face like water from a bathtub. That's impossible. You're a mechanic? Yeah, I get that a lot. I pulled out the acquisition papers, slid them across the desk. Everything's legal. Your previous investors were eager to sell. Something about cash flow problems. Tom grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. This can't be legal. I would have been notified. I would have had to sign check page 4. Your signature's right there, along with your business partners. He found the page, stared at it like it might change if he looked hard enough. I don't understand. When did I sign this? 2 months ago. You thought you were signing a loan modification agreement, which technically you were. The loan was just being transferred to a new holder, me. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Outside, I could hear the sounds of my shop coming to life. Air wrenches, hydraulic lifts, the controlled chaos of honest work. What do you want? Tom finally asked. Right now, I want you to do your job. You've got 3 active development projects and a dozen properties under management. I expect them handled professionally. And if I refuse, then you'll be in breach of contract. I'll foreclose on your properties, liquidate your assets, and sue you for damages. Your choice. Tom stood up slowly, his hands shaking slightly as he set the papers back on my desk. Lisa doesn't know about this, does she? My wife doesn't know about a lot of things. I met his eyes steadily, just like I didn't know about a lot of things until recently. His face flushed red. I don't know what you think you know, but I know you've been staying at the Riverside Inn every Thursday for the past 3 months. Room 237. I know you paid for dinner at Romano's last Tuesday for 2 people, but you were supposed to be in Albany on business. I know Lisa's been working a lot of late nights lately, except her secretary says she's been leaving the office at 5:30. Tom's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You've been spying on us? I've been paying attention. There's a difference. I stood up, walked around the desk until I was close enough to smell his expensive cologne. Here's what's going to happen, Tom. You're going to continue running your business. My business now, professionally and efficiently. You're going to stop seeing my wife. And you're going to pray I don't decide to make your life more difficult than it already is. You can't do this. I'll fight you in court. With what money? I own your company, remember? And Lisa's law firm? They represent my interests now, too. Conflict of interest, you'll have to find new lawyers. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, caught himself against the door frame. You planned this, he whispered. I plan to run a business. Everything else is just consequences. After Tom left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring out at the garage floor. My guys were working on a fleet of police cruisers, the contract that had started my expansion 5 years ago. Good, honest work that kept the community running. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Working late again tonight, don't wait up. I deleted the message without responding. Then I opened my laptop and started making some calls. If Lisa wanted to play games, I'd show her how the game was really played. But first, I had a business to run. And now, thanks to Tom's stupidity and greed, it was a much bigger business than it had been last week. The funny thing about being underestimated is that it gives you room to maneuver. People don't watch the mechanic too closely. They don't think he's smart enough to hurt them. They're usually wrong about that. The call came at 2 a.m. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling and listening to Lisa's steady breathing beside me when my phone buzzed. "Eddie, it's Mike. You need to get down here." Mike Torino owned Torino's Tavern, the kind of blue-collar bar where my employees unwound after work and the local cops grabbed a beer before heading home. More importantly, Mike was one of the few people who knew exactly how successful my business had become. "What's the problem? Your boy Tom's here, drunk off his A, running his mouth about you and Lisa. Thought you should know." I slipped out of bed, grabbed my clothes, and got dressed in the hallway. Lisa never stirred. She'd been sleeping like the dead lately, probably exhausted from maintaining 2 relationships. Torino's was dimly lit and mostly empty at this hour, just a few regulars and the kind of people who had nowhere else to go. Tom was at the far end of the bar, still in his business suit, but with his tie loosened and his hair disheveled. "Eddie," he called out when he saw me, his voice too loud for the quiet space. "Come have a drink with me. Let's celebrate our new business partnership." I nodded to Mike and took the stool next to Tom. "You're making a scene." "Am I? Good." Tom raised his glass, whiskey from the smell of it. "Because I've got some things to say about you, Eddie Sterling. Things people should know." "Like what?" "Like how you're not the simple mechanic everyone thinks you are. Like how you've been playing games, buying up businesses, manipulating people." He leaned closer, his breath reeking of alcohol. "Like how your wife deserves better than a sneaky bastard who spies on people." The bar had gone quiet. Even the regulars were listening now, and I could see Mike reaching for his phone, probably ready to call the cops if things got ugly. "Tom, you're drunk. Let me call you a cab." "I'm not done." He stood up unsteadily, pointing at me with his glass. "You want to know what your wife says about you? She says you're boring. She says you smell like motor oil, and you have no ambition. She says—" I was on my feet before he could finish the sentence. "That's enough." "Or what? You'll fire me? You'll ruin my business?" Tom laughed bitterly. "Too late for that, isn't it? But you know what you can't control? You can't control who your wife loves." The punch came from somewhere deep inside me, a place I'd kept locked up for months. Tom went down hard, his glass shattering against the bar, red liquid streaming from his nose. The silence that followed was deafening. "Jesus, Eddie," Mike said quietly. "You okay?" I looked down at Tom, who was trying to sit up, red stains on his shirt and confusion in his eyes. Then I looked at my hand, knuckles already starting to swell. "Yeah," I said, "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine, not even close. The next morning, Lisa was gone before I woke up. No note, no goodbye, just an empty coffee cup in the sink and the lingering scent of her perfume. I was in my office by 7, trying to pretend my hand didn't hurt and that I hadn't just committed assault in front of a dozen witnesses, when Carol knocked. "Eddie, there's a police officer here to see you." Officer Danny D'Angelo had been 3 years ahead of me in high school, back when we were both just kids from the wrong side of Lake City. Now he was a 20-year veteran of the force, and from the look on his face, this wasn't a social call. "Hey, Danny. Eddie." He closed the door behind him, took off his hat. "We need to talk. About last night, Tom Hartwell filed a complaint, assault and battery, says you attacked him without provocation." I held up my swollen hand. "Does this look unprovoked to you? What I think doesn't matter. What matters is that there were witnesses, and they're saying you threw the first punch, after he spent 10 minutes telling the whole bar about my wife's opinion of me." Danny sighed, settled into the chair across from my desk. "Eddie, I've known you since we were kids. You're not a violent guy. But this situation with your wife, people are talking." "What kind of talking?" "The kind where she's been seen around town with Tom Hartwell. The kind where your daughter's been posting on social media about how her parents are having problems. The kind where people are starting to choose sides." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Whose side are they choosing? Not yours. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. Lisa was the successful lawyer, the respected professional, the woman who did charity work and served on committees. I was just the mechanic who'd gotten lucky, the blue-collar guy who'd married above his station. Danny, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Go ahead. If I don't press charges against Tom for what he said last night, will you pursue the assault complaint? Danny was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Officially, I have to investigate any complaint that's filed. And unofficially, Tom Hartwell's been a pain in my A for years. Rich boy who thinks his money makes him untouchable. But Eddie, you can't go around hitting people, even if they deserve it. I know, do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to lose everything. Your wife, your reputation, maybe your business if this gets ugly. Is revenge really worth all that? I thought about Lisa laughing at the wedding, about Tom's condescending smile, about 15 years of marriage to a woman who was embarrassed by what I did for a living, even as she spent the money I earned doing it. Yeah, I said finally. I think it is. Danny put his hat back on, stood up slowly. Then God help you, Eddie. Because once you start down this road, there's no going back. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, listening to the sounds of my business running smoothly around me. 47 vehicles, 63 employees, contracts worth millions of dollars. All of it built by the grease monkey who wasn't smart enough to keep his wife happy. But maybe it was time to show everyone just how smart this grease monkey really was. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday, delivered by a courier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I was under the hood of a '98 Chevy when Carol came out to get me, her face grim. Eddie, you need to see this. I wiped my hands on a rag and followed her inside. The papers were spread across my desk like a declaration of war, which in a way they were. Lisa was asking for half of everything. The house, the business, the investments, even the vintage Mustang I'd restored in high school. She was claiming emotional distress, citing my increasingly erratic and violent behavior as grounds for the divorce. The kicker was at the bottom. She was seeking a restraining order, claiming she feared for her safety. Clever, I said aloud. What's that, boss? Carol asked. Nothing, just admiring the strategy. Because it was a good strategy. Paint me as the unstable ex-husband, the violent blue-collar guy who couldn't handle losing his wife to a better man. Get the restraining order, then use it to justify taking half my assets. Clean, simple, effective. Too bad Lisa had forgotten one crucial detail. I'd been planning for this possibility for months. My phone rang. Jake Morrison, my new son-in-law. Eddie, we need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere? Where? The diner on Route 9. 1 hour. Mel's Diner was the kind of place that served coffee in thick white mugs and never closed, even during blizzards. Jake was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth and looking like he hadn't slept in days. You look like heck, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Jennifer's been getting calls, from Lisa, from her friends, from people at the country club. They're saying you attacked Tom, that you're dangerous, that Lisa's afraid of you. And what do you think? Jake studied my face for a moment. I think you're a lot of things, Eddie, but dangerous isn't one of them, at least not the way they mean. The waitress came over, poured coffee without being asked. Small-town service at its finest. There's something else, Jake said after she left. Tom's been calling my dad, trying to set up meetings. Says he's got investment opportunities, ways to make quick money before your situation affects his business. What kind of opportunities? The kind where my dad puts up the money and Tom handles the details. Real estate flips, development projects, that sort of thing. I sipped my coffee, thinking. Tom was scrambling, trying to get liquid capital before I could tighten the screws. Smart, but not smart enough. Jake, I'm going to ask you to do something and you're going to think I'm crazy. Try me. I want you to encourage your father to invest with Tom, as much as he's willing to risk. Jake stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you insane? Tom works for you now. You could destroy any investment my dad makes. Exactly. The understanding dawned slowly on Jake's face. You want my dad to lose his money. Your dad spent an entire wedding reception making jokes about the grease monkey his daughter married. He laughed when Tom called me a manual laborer. He stood by while his new business partner humiliated me in front of my own wife. So this is revenge? This is consequences. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Your father thinks he's better than me because he wears a suit to work. Tom thinks he can steal my wife because he's got a college degree and soft hands. They're both about to learn that intelligence isn't measured by the cleanliness of your fingernails. Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing what I'd told him. What about Jennifer? She doesn't deserve to get hurt because her father's an A. Jennifer will be fine. You've got a good job, and you're not stupid enough to invest money you can't afford to lose, but your father, he's been coasting on inherited wealth and lucky investments his whole life. It's time he learned what real consequences feel like. And if I say no, I shrugged, then your father will probably invest with Tom anyway, and I'll destroy him just the same. The only difference is whether you're in a position to protect Jennifer when it happens. Jake stared into his coffee cup like it might hold the answers to all of life's problems. You really have thought this through, haven't you? I've had a lot of time to think lately. Funny how getting served divorce papers focuses the mind. What about Lisa? Do you still love her? The question caught me off guard. Did I still love her? The woman who'd laughed at jokes about my profession? The woman who'd been cheating on me for months? The woman who was now trying to take half of everything I'd built? I love the woman I thought she was, I said finally. But that woman never existed. Jake nodded slowly, understanding something in my voice that I hadn't even realized was there. Okay, he said. I'll talk to my dad. But Eddie? Yeah? When this is all over, when you've gotten your revenge, what then? I stood up, threw a 5 on the table for the coffee. Then I'll find out what it feels like to win. But as I walked back to my truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that winning and being happy weren't necessarily the same thing. The confrontation came on a Friday night at Torino's Tavern, exactly 2 weeks after I'd punched Tom Hartwell. I was there with my crew, the guys who'd worked for me for years, who knew the real story behind the gossip and rumors. That's when my former friends walked in. Bill Henderson had been my best man at my wedding. Steve Kowalski and I had played poker every Thursday for 8 years. Mark Patterson had helped me move into my first apartment when I was 22 and broke. All of them had chosen Lisa's side. Well, well, Bill said, approaching our table with the kind of swagger that comes from righteous indignation and too much beer. If it isn't Lake City's most famous wife-beater. The entire bar went quiet. Even the jukebox seemed to pause between songs. I never touched Lisa, I said calmly. No, just her boyfriend, Steve added. Real classy, Eddie. Beating up a guy in a bar because you can't keep your woman happy. My crew started to stand up. Mike from the garage, Tony from the tow truck division, Carlos who handled my books. Good men who'd worked hard for everything they had. Sit down, I told them quietly. This isn't your fight. Like heck it isn't, Mike said. These idiots want to run their mouths about our boss. They can deal with all of us. But I was already standing, facing the 3 men who'd once been my closest friends. You want to say something to me, Bill? Say it. I'll say it. You're a piece of crap, Eddie. Lisa's a good woman and she deserves better than some psycho mechanic who thinks he owns her. Is that what she told you? That I think I own her? She told us enough, Mark said, about how you've been controlling, jealous, violent, about how she's afraid to come home at night. The lies came so easily, wrapped in just enough truth to be believable. Yes, I'd been distant lately. Yes, I'd been angry. Yes, I'd punched Tom Hartwell in this very bar. But I'd never laid a hand on Lisa. Never even raised my voice to her. Did she tell you about the hotel receipts? I asked. The ones from the Riverside Inn every Thursday for 3 months? That's her business, Bill said. Maybe if you'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere for affection. Did she tell you about the text messages? The ones where she called me a boring grease monkey and said she was embarrassed to be married to me? Shut up, Eddie, Steve said. Nobody wants to hear your sob story. Did she tell you that Tom Hartwell works for me now? That I own his company, his properties, his future? That stopped them. All 3 men exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. That's BS, Mark said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone, showed them the acquisition documents I kept in my email. Sterling Holdings, LLC, that's me. I bought Hartwell Development 3 weeks ago. Your friend Lisa has been sleeping with my employee. Bill grabbed the phone, read for a moment, then handed it back with a disgusted look. So what? You think that makes you some kind of big shot? You're still just a mechanic who got lucky. And you're still just a middle manager who thinks a college degree makes him better than the guys who actually work for a living. The punch came faster than I expected. Bill caught me in the jaw, snapping my head back and sending me stumbling into the table behind me. But I'd been in fights before, back when I was young and stupid and thought violence solved problems. This time, I was older and smarter, and I had something Bill didn't have. Absolutely nothing left to lose. I came back swinging. The fight lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. Bill was bigger than me, but he was soft from years behind a desk. Steve tried to jump in, but Mike tackled him into the bar. Mark just stood there, watching his friends get their asses kicked by the grease monkey they'd come to humiliate. When it was over, Bill was on the floor with a busted nose, Steve was being held against the wall by Tony and Carlos, and I was standing in the middle of Torino's tavern with split knuckles and a black eye, breathing hard and feeling more alive than I had in months. "Anyone else want to discuss my marriage?" I asked the room. Silence. "Good, because here's what's going to happen. Lisa can have her divorce. She can have half the house, half the savings, half of whatever she thinks she's entitled to. But she's not getting my business, and she's not getting my respect." I looked directly at Bill, who was trying to sit up and failing. "And anyone who wants to take her side in this can go right ahead. Just remember that I know where all of you work, where you bank, where you shop. I know which of you are behind on your mortgages, which of you have been cheating on your taxes, which of you have been lying to your wives about where you spend your Thursday nights." The threat hung in the air like smoke from a tool barrel. "This is Lake City," I continued. "Small town, small minds, long memories. You want to make me the villain? Fine. But villains have a way of making life difficult for the people who cross them." I walked toward the door, my crew falling in behind me like a loyal army. "Eddie," Mark called out, his voice shaky, "this isn't over." I turned back, smiled without any warmth at all. "You're right, Mark. It's not." Because I still had one card left to play, one final move that would show everyone in Lake City exactly who Eddie Sterling really was. And it was going to be beautiful. The Lake City Community Board meeting was held the first Tuesday of every month in the high school auditorium. Usually it drew maybe 30 people, retirees with nothing better to do and local business owners who wanted to complain about zoning laws. This Tuesday, the auditorium was packed. Word had gotten around about the Sterling divorce, about the fight at Torino's, about the rumors and counter-rumors that had been flying through town for weeks. People came expecting drama, and I was about to give them more than they bargained for. I sat in the back row wearing my best suit and a smile that made people nervous. Lisa was in the front, surrounded by her supporters. The country club crowd, her law firm colleagues, the kind of people who thought they ran Lake City because they had money and connections. Tom Hartwell sat beside her, his nose still slightly crooked from our encounter at the bar. He kept glancing back at me, probably wondering what I was planning. He was about to find out. "Before we begin tonight's regular business," said Mayor Patricia Collins, a 70-year-old former teacher who'd been running these meetings since before I was born, "I understand there are some personal matters that members of our community would like to address." Lisa stood up, smoothing her skirt and putting on her best professional smile. "Thank you, Mayor Collins. I know this is unusual, but I felt it was important to address some of the rumors that have been circulating about my family situation." She launched into a carefully prepared speech about domestic violence, about the courage it takes to leave a harmful relationship, about the importance of supporting women who find themselves in dangerous situations. She was good. I had to give her that. Professional, sympathetic, just vulnerable enough to be believable. "My husband has become increasingly unstable," she said, her voice catching slightly. "The violence started small, throwing things, punching walls, but it escalated. 2 weeks ago, he physically assaulted a friend of mine in a public place. I fear for my safety, and I fear for the safety of anyone who tries to help me." The crowd murmured sympathetically. Several women nodded knowingly. Tom put a supportive hand on her shoulder, playing his role perfectly. "I'm not asking for pity," Lisa continued. "I'm asking for understanding, and I'm asking this community to be aware that domestic violence can happen to anyone, even successful professional women who should know better." She sat down to scattered applause. Mayor Collins looked around the room. "Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this matter?" I stood up. "I would." The auditorium went dead silent. Lisa's face went pale. Tom's hand tightened on her shoulder. I walked him down the aisle slowly, taking my time, letting the tension build. When I reached the front, I turned to face the crowd. 300 of my neighbors, my customers, my community. My name is Eddie Sterling, I began. Most of you know me as the guy who fixes your cars, who tows you out of ditches when you slide off the road in winter, who shows up at 3 in the morning when your teenager breaks down on the highway. Nods throughout the audience. Whatever else they thought about me, they knew I'd always been reliable. My wife just told you that I'm violent, unstable, dangerous. She's right about one thing. I did punch Tom Hartwell 2 weeks ago, right in the face. As hard as I could. More murmurs, but I held up a hand for silence. I punched him because he was drunk in a bar, telling everyone who would listen about how my wife said I was boring, that I smelled like motor oil, that she was embarrassed to be married to a grease monkey. I looked directly at Lisa. What my wife didn't tell you is that she's been having an affair with Tom for the past 4 months. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, text messages. I've got documentation of everything. The crowd erupted. Lisa shot to her feet. That's a lie. Is it? I pulled out a folder, thick with papers. Because I've got copies of everything right here. Hotel registration records, credit card statements, even some very interesting text messages where you discuss how much you hate being married to someone who works with his hands. Tom tried to stand up, but I wasn't finished. But here's the really interesting part. Tom here has been telling people he's a successful real estate developer, a self-made man who built his business from nothing. What he hasn't been telling people is that 3 weeks ago, his business was acquired by Sterling Holdings, LLC. I smiled at the crowd. That's my company. Tom Hartwell works for me now. The silence was deafening. You see, Sterling Holdings owns 47 vehicles, employs 63 people, and holds contracts worth $12 million annually. We're the largest automotive and towing operation in 3 counties. We also own a trucking company, 2 parts suppliers, and as of last month, Hartwell Development Group. I could see people in the audience doing the math, realizing that the grease monkey they'd been looking down on was probably worth more than most of them combined. So when my wife's boyfriend stood up in a bar and told everyone how she was embarrassed to be married to me, I got a little upset. When he said she deserved better than a boring mechanic who smells like motor oil, I decided to show him exactly what this mechanic was capable of. I turned back to Tom, who looked like he was about to be sick. Tom, remember that investment opportunity you've been pitching to people around town? The real estate flip that was going to make everyone rich? The one where Bill Henderson invested his kid's college fund? Tom's face went white. I ended it. Yesterday. Pulled the financing, canceled the permits, had the property condemned. Bill's money is gone, Tom. All of it. The crowd was getting restless now. People standing up, voices rising. Bill Henderson was somewhere in the audience, probably realizing he'd just lost everything because he'd chosen the wrong side in a divorce. And Lisa, I said, turning to my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, remember that restraining order you filed? The one claiming you're afraid I might hurt you? She nodded, too shocked to speak. Interesting timing, because it was filed the same day Tom's business accounts were frozen, the same day his credit cards were canceled, the same day he found out that his new boss, me, had decided he was no longer a good fit for the company. I looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people who'd known me for years, who'd underestimated me, who'd chosen sides without knowing what they were really choosing between. You want to know who Eddie Sterling really is? I'm the guy who remembers every slight, every insult, every time someone looked down on me because I work with my hands. I'm the guy who spent 15 years building a business empire while pretending to be just a simple mechanic. And I'm the guy who just destroyed everyone who tried to destroy me. I walked back toward the aisle, then stopped and turned around one more time. Oh, and Lisa, about that divorce settlement you're asking for? Half of everything? She stared at me, waiting. You can have half of the house. You can have half of the savings account. But the business, Sterling Holdings, that's mine, all of it. Always has been, always will be. I smiled one last time. You wanted to leave the grease monkey for a better man? Congratulations. You just left a millionaire for a guy who's about to be unemployed. The auditorium erupted into chaos as I walked out. People shouting, arguing, demanding explanations. Lisa crying, Tom looking like he was about to faint, Bill Henderson screaming about his lost investment. But I didn't look back. I'd said everything I needed to say. Outside, the cool night air felt like freedom. My truck was parked under a streetlight, solid and reliable and honest. just like the work that had built my empire. I drove home to the house that would soon be half Lisa's, but it didn't matter. I had something she could never take from me: the satisfaction of watching everyone who'd underestimated me realize exactly how wrong they'd been. The grease monkey had won, and it felt even better than I'd imagined.